I always cherished the old house where I grew up. It was small, a bit worn, but brimming with memories. Every creak of the floorboards and corner of the garden held a piece of my childhood. When my grandparents passed, they left it to me. Though I had since moved out and gotten engaged, I never intended to sell it. My parents lived there comfortably, and I made it clear to my fiancée that the house was off limits. She always seemed indifferent to the property, dismissing it as unremarkable. But apparently, she had other plans brewing beneath the surface. One Monday afternoon, I received a frantic call from my father. "Son, something strange is happening," he said, his voice heavy with unease. "We just got an email from a lawyer, an eviction notice. It's from your fiancée." I froze, the phone nearly slipping from my hand. An eviction notice? From her? My fiancé had no claim to that house. How could this even be happening? My father forwarded me the documents. When I opened the email, my stomach churned. The notice declared her as the new owner of the house and demanded my parents vacate the premises within 30 days. My name was conspicuously absent, as if I no longer existed in the equation. Shaken, I called her immediately, but she didn't answer. My texts went unanswered too. Confusion mingled with rising fury as I waited for her to return home that evening. When she finally walked through the door, I confronted her. "What is this about an eviction notice for my parents?" I demanded, holding up my phone. She froze for a moment, caught off guard, before quickly recovering with a dismissive shrug. "Oh, that," she said casually. "I was going to talk to you about it." Her nonchalance only fueled my anger. "You're evicting my parents without telling me?" I asked, incredulous. She sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "My sister needs a place to stay. Her house sold unexpectedly, and she's in a tough spot. Your parents could find an apartment, and we could let my sister move in instead." The audacity left me speechless for a moment. "Are you kidding me?" I finally said, my voice trembling with anger. "That house is in my name. You have no right to evict anyone, least of all my parents." She waved a hand dismissively. "We're engaged. We'll be married soon. That means I'll have a say in your properties. Why can't your parents just live somewhere else?" Her entitlement was staggering. She spoke as though I had already signed over every aspect of my life to her. Furious, I demanded she rescind the notice immediately, but she just shrugged again. "I'm only being practical," she said. "Your parents have had that house for years. They can downsize. My sister's family is growing, and they need more space." "Downsize?" I snapped. "That house has been their home for decades. You can't just toss them aside like unwanted furniture." Her tone turned icy. "Why are you being so dramatic? I'm your future wife, and I want my family cared for. If your parents can't handle a move, that's their problem." It was then she admitted she'd already involved a lawyer friend to forge documents, claiming partial ownership of the property. Her plan was to leverage our upcoming marriage, assuming it would give her automatic rights. She seemed entirely convinced I'd just go along with her scheme. "You tried to evict my parents behind my back so your sister could move in?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Yes," she replied bluntly. "I knew you'd overreact. My sister's situation is urgent, and this is the best solution. Stop blowing it out of proportion." Her arrogance was staggering. I told her I'd consult my own attorney about the matter, and her reaction was a derisive laugh. "Go ahead," she said. "You'll see that once we're married, the house will essentially be ours, not just yours." The following day, I met with a lawyer friend, who was equally appalled by her actions. He assured me that the house was unequivocally mine. The deed was in my name alone, and her so-called eviction papers were legally baseless. Worse, her attempt to forge ownership claims could be considered fraud if she pursued it further. Relieved, I informed my parents to disregard the notice and stay put. They were deeply shaken, unable to understand how my fiancé could treat them so cruelly. My father, visibly hurt, asked, "Are you sure you want to marry someone who would do this to us?" I didn't have an answer for him. That evening, I confronted her again. Calm but firm, I laid out the facts. "My lawyer says you have no claim to the house. If you push this, you're risking legal trouble." She shrugged, utterly unrepentant. "Why make this such a big deal? Just do what's best for my sister. Your parents can find an apartment, Or you can rent one for them. The audacity was staggering. No, I said firmly. That's not happening. Why do you care more about your sister's convenience than my parents' well-being? Her response was as cold as it was cruel. Because my sister's family is expanding, and they need the space. Your parents are just old. They don't need a big house anymore. Her words ignited a fire in me. That's their home, I said through clenched teeth. It doesn't matter how old they are or how much space they use. You don't get to decide they're disposable. She scoffed. Fine. Be dramatic. That was the last straw. The scales fell from my eyes. Her entitlement manipulation and complete disregard for my parents' dignity made one thing clear. This was not someone I could trust, let alone marry. The engagement was over. I told her to leave and cut all ties. The house, like my family's love and loyalty, was not hers to trample on. I glared at her, my heart pounding in disbelief. She stood there unapologetic, as if her actions were justified, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Let's see if you feel the same way after we're married, she said with a smug smile, clearly assuming I would cave eventually. In that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just a petty argument or a misunderstanding. It was a fundamental clash of values, a revelation of who she truly was. She would do anything to serve her own family's interests, even if it meant trampling over mine. The realization hit me like a wave of nausea. Disgust roiled in my gut. Maybe we shouldn't be getting married at all, I muttered, almost to myself. She froze, the smugness wiped from her face. What did you just say? I looked her straight in the eyes, the weight of my decision making my voice steady. I'm calling off the engagement. Her eyes widened in shock before narrowing with fury. You wouldn't dare. You'll lose me, she spat, as though she were some grand prize. She shifted tactics, her voice rising in dramatic indignation. I can't believe you'd abandon me over a misunderstanding, she wailed, casting herself as the victim. I was just trying to help my sister. Doesn't that show how big my heart is? Her words almost made me laugh. A big heart. The twisted logic was astounding. Helping your sister by secretly forging documents to evict my parents is not a kind gesture, I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger. It's manipulative and deceitful. Her demeanor changed again, this time to pleading. We don't have to go through with the eviction, she said quickly. We can talk this out. Let's fix this. But the damage was done. Trust shattered like glass underfoot. I had seen who she really was. Someone willing to lie, manipulate, and steamroll my family for her own gain. It was a betrayal so massive, there was no going back. Talk it out, I echoed bitterly. After you tried to remove my parents from their home behind my back? Tears began to fall, but I wasn't moved. She cried, I made a mistake. I thought you'd understand once I explained. My jaw clenched as I shot back. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door, not forging legal documents to kick out my parents. Her tears quickly turned to frustration. Fine. Be stubborn. You'll regret losing me over some worthless old house. My blood boiled. Worthless, I repeated, my voice cold and sharp. That house is my childhood home. It's where my parents built their life, where I grew up. If you think it's worthless, then we're definitely done. The room went silent. She stared at me, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. I stood firm, my decision final. The engagement is off. I'm calling my parents to let them know everything is safe, and that you're out of the picture. She choked back a sob before storming off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside, the cool night air offering a momentary reprieve. My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from her alternating between apologies and insults. She threatened to tarnish my reputation, to tell everyone I'd financially led her on. I was done being manipulated. The next morning, I packed her belongings into boxes. When she returned later, I pointed to them by the door. Take these and leave my keys, I said firmly. Tears streaked her face as she glowered at me. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure your name is mud in my family's circle. I shrugged unbothered. Do what you want. The truth is on my side. She tried one last time to coax me, claiming she'd call off the eviction. But it was too late. Her false apologies only deepened the betrayal. I told her to leave, and she finally did. That same day, I called my parents and explained everything. They were relieved, their anxiety finally lifting. My mother, who had been quietly heartbroken, let out a sigh of relief. To think she wanted to be part of our family while plotting to throw us out, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. My father's words grounded me. Better to find out now than after the wedding, he said simply. He was right. I had dodged a bullet. Predictably, she didn't go quietly. She spread rumors among mutual acquaintances, claiming I'd promised her the house as a wedding gift. At first, some believed her, but when pressed for evidence, she had none. Her web of lies unraveled quickly. She even showed up at my workplace once, cornering me in the parking lot. Her tone was a mix of anger and desperation. You're an idiot for losing me, she spat before stomping off. If that was her idea of reconciliation, it only confirmed I'd made the right decision. In the weeks that followed, she continued to sulk and send sporadic messages, oscillating between guilt-tripping and lashing out. I ignored them all. Eventually, I blocked her number entirely. I later heard she moved in with her sister's family, ironically forcing them to figure out a new living arrangement. Good luck to them. Some of her relatives tried reaching out to me, insisting I'd overreacted and should have handled things differently. But how do you talk it out with someone who forged legal documents to betray your trust? I stopped explaining myself and let my actions speak for themselves. As the weeks passed, the heartbreak of ending the engagement was replaced by overwhelming relief. I had narrowly avoided tying my life to someone manipulative, entitled, and deceitful. My parents remained in their home, safe and unbothered, while I moved forward with a renewed sense of caution about who I let into my life. In the end, the best revenge wasn't a dramatic confrontation or public shaming. It was simply cutting her off and letting her face the consequences of her actions. I may have lost a fiancé, but I kept my dignity, my family's trust, and the home that held generations of memories. That to me was a victory.